Welcome to Holding Down the Fort, an award-winning podcast show dedicated to curating knowledge, resources, and relevant stories for today's military spouses so they can continue to make confident and informed decisions for themselves and their families. Because let's face it, we know who's really holding down the fort. I'm Jen Amos, a Gold Star daughter, veteran spouse, and your host for Holding Down the Fort by U.S. Vet Wealth. Let's get started. Hey everyone, welcome back to Holding Down the Fort, an award-winning podcast show. I am your founder and co-host, Jen Amos. And as always, I have my amazing co-host with me, Jenny Lynn Stroop. Jenny Lynn, welcome back.
Hey, thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
Yes. And we are pretty excited because we have yet another person that you invited to our show, which I am not complaining about because you make my job easier. So let's go ahead and bring him on. We have Paul Szoldra, who is the editor-in-chief of Task and Purpose and Duffel Blog. He's also a dad, husband, dog lover, journalist, entrepreneur, veteran, and this is fun, longtime fan of pizza. So Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. So I thought I'd ask, since it's a new year, how's 2021 treating you lately?
Wow.
That loaded question? Is that too much?
Very loaded question. You know, I saw this meme or video or something that somebody was sharing with like a safety thing about, so many days since the last, safety issue or whatever. And it wasn't safety. It was like for 2021. And it was just flicking off day 6, I think it was like, okay, this year has already gone off the rails. This, I think for me, because I cover the news and satire. Yeah, I was really, really hopeful for 2021. And then January 6th came around and this year went off the rails. So it's been really hectic, to say the least, for me since then.
Yeah, that was definitely a very controversial day, depending on what side you're on. But basically, everyone basically saw that was a very, very controversial day. And depending on who you're talking to, they could just suddenly stop being your friend because you're believing in something different. So you were hinting at kind of the work that you're doing. We sort of mentioned here, Paul, that you are the editor-in-chief of Task and Purpose and Duffel Blog. So let's talk about Task and Purpose first. For people that are hearing about it for the first time, what is this news site about?
So Task and Purpose was a website founded in 2014. So we've been around for quite a while, and we primarily we have news, analysis, and culture coverage of the military and veterans community. So it's kind of, that runs the gamut from, what's happening in social space or veterans are talking about. It also means that we also are reporting on, high level, really important decisions, from the Pentagon, and we have a correspondent there as well.
Mm-hmm. Let me ask you with this follow-up question. What is the common feedback or testimonial or what have you do you get from your readers?
Okay, so great question. I think just to describe Task and Purpose a little bit better, we focus primarily on the more junior levels of the military. I found that a lot of our competitors and national outlets, they cover the military and they talk about what the generals are doing and what the Pentagon is doing and all these things. And then, you end up missing a whole lot of stuff going on at the ranks far below that. Personally, I find those stories way more interesting and way more meaningful. And so that's kind of what our coverage is that we think about. How does looking at a story that maybe would be about, if some general says something in a speech, some other outlet might cover that. Mm-hmm. We're first thinking about does the junior enlisted even care about this thing? Does it even matter to them? And, if the answer is no, we don't rate it, and kind of we start from that perspective first, thinking about, the active duty ranks, more at the junior levels than other places.
Mm-hmm. I actually appreciate that because you're right. When I think about what usually is covered, I often don't think about the junior level. So maybe that's just my own ignorance, but I think it's very smart on your end to cover that demographic.
Yeah. And I think that, what's interesting for us is that we have that perspective. I mean, I'm a former Marine sergeant, so I come with this sort of level of, being a junior enlisted service member myself, my staff. We have people on staff that are former military members as well. And so we think about things a little bit differently. And a lot of times we'll cover something and then it's kind of almost, there's an educational effect to the senior leadership of like, how task and purpose might be covering something. They didn't even think of it that way. When you have some, former sergeant pointing out to you in a headline, how stupid that policy is. We do that as well at Duffel Blog. It's kind of that same mindset. There's a level of getting information, but also, bringing that information up to higher levels that, they're in a bubble. They don't really get some of the questions we ask. And so like, I'll send my Pentagon correspondent, Jeff, to ask some really sort of question that's really of importance to a junior enlisted person or a junior officer. And, those generals probably were never even going to be asked that at all by some other reporter. And they, kind of, sometimes it catches them off guard. And, sometimes it helps them get a better sense of what the vast majority of the ranks truly care about.
Yeah. Well, thank you for elaborating on that. Jenny Lynn, I heard you nodding earlier, so I thought I'd sort of backtrack for a quick second. And if you can share actually how you know Paul and what your thoughts are, if you want to add to the conversation.
I can. I'm going to say that, Paul did a great job describing what it is he does from an outsider insider perspective. I guess I have. I will say, it's great that their target market is people who are still active duty. And I'd say, recently separated and therefore post 9/11, because it's people writing for people that are still post 9/11. And so the things that applied to folks who were in 2001 really kind of still apply today in 2021 because we're still in post 9/11 conflict. And so, they do a great job of talking about the issues that have come with post 9/11 service. I know Paul because I'm a writer and I have written some for Task and Purpose, more on the culture and family side, sharing my experience as a military spouse and my family's experience with the signature wounds of post 9/11 conflict. So, I did a piece last year on traumatic brain injury and what it was like for our family to walk through that. And also a piece about having young children and watching their parents deploy unexpectedly because we're in such a time of such unrest where things happen very quickly and what that looks like for a family to experience. I think they do a good job of trying to bring people in and let them see like, yeah, this is what really is on the hearts and minds of young military families.
Yeah, I really like that. Can you maybe share what are some of the challenges you feel like you face, Paul, in, managing this new site, Task and Purpose?
Challenges are plenty.
Should I rephrase that?
I mean, I guess we have the same challenges as any other news site, trying to find stories and find people to talk to you and, get tips and all those things. And I think for us, we're pretty focused on our audience and, the readers and kind of what they respond to or what really matters to them. And so that kind of leads us to getting the other stuff, getting the tips, getting the people that want to talk to us. I'm really heartened a lot of times by calling up whoever and hearing the phrase, I love Task and Purpose when I say where I'm from. I used to work at Business Insider, which is a, pretty big financial news site for the most part, but I did defense coverage there. And the difference was really apparent. I'd call up and say, Paul Szoldra from Business Insider, and they would say, Business Insider, what the hell is that? Like, you guys cover the military? I don't have to do any of that explanation hardly ever, which is really nice. And, people just trust us to get it right, and we don't always do that. We screw up plenty, just like anyone else, but we try as much as possible to get it right and, get the help. At the end of the day, our primary concern is informing our readers and giving them the best information that they can get so that they can make, proper decisions on whatever is going on in their lives. And, I think we do that for the most part. And it's pretty awesome. I'm pretty honored and excited to work every single day doing this kind of stuff in this role. I know your question was about challenges, and I will say the challenges for us in the past 4 years with the Trump administration, it's interesting. We're talking right now, right before we're going to have a new presidential administration, and there's going to be changes and things happening. And I honestly, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know how it's going to go or whatever. So, I'm sure we'll have challenges there, and those are kind of sort of wait and see. The challenges of the last 4 years, I think we've had some serious problems with just transparency in DoD. The public affairs mantra, the principles of information, and there are things like, maximum disclosure, minimum delay, these kinds of things that myself as a reporter, I've known and operated under that framework for a very long time. And so many more things have become classified, like troop numbers in Afghanistan, or even metrics on how the war is going. Those were made classified under the Trump administration, and typically things that get classified are usually things that people don't want to talk about. And so if everything was hunky-dory in Afghanistan, I imagine it wouldn't be classified. And just other things about just the relationship between the DoD and the press. I think it's not a partisan statement to look at President Trump's demonization of the media and calling us the enemy of the people, and figuring out that has really not helped us inform our readers as best as we possibly can. Because, the tone is set at the top. And so the DoD public affairs apparatus has responded, to that by doing way less briefings on camera. It's a little bit harder for us to deal with that. So that's been a challenge for us. It hasn't made our job impossible. Information that should be made public has a tendency to be made public regardless of whether the government wants it to. So, if a public affairs DoD spokesperson doesn't get on camera, that will probably get that information by other means. And so then they lose control of the message, and it's their fault, not ours. So those are all our challenges. Will they be erased on day one of the Biden administration? Absolutely not. Would totally doubt that. But, I have a feeling it will be a little bit better in terms of transparency, but I think there'll be other challenges that kind of come up, through the years. And I don't know what those are, but it'll be interesting to see. What kind of wrenches get thrown in my way.
Yeah, I appreciate you elaborating on that, because I just think that in a weird way, I feel conflicted with like mainstream media and news outlets and just the mixed messages like left and right. And for me, being a former Cali girl of 20 years, like I could very much see the left side, and then being on the East Coast and being around the military, I could see a lot of the right side. I can see a lot of libertarian side. I could see a lot of different perspectives. And I feel like they're all like justified in their own way. But at the same time, it's like, where do we find common ground, or where do we find the truth? Like it surprises me when I talk to some friends and, it's just, they're so adamant, on a certain side, like a sports team, like they won't care about the other team. They're so adamant about sticking to their side. And it's like, how do we find that common ground, and how do we provide like that truth, for people to really know like what is really going on? And I think like, since Trump came in, like the talk of politics in general has been such a major conversation point for many, personal relationships, and people are, becoming more aware. And I think that, the media or mainstream media in Hollywood, for example, and big tech have really kind of capitalized off of that. And so, I'm not trying to sound political or anything, but for me, I'm really just saying out loud, like my own frustration with kind of knowing, where do I go? Like, where do I go? Where do I try to understand and learn these things? And then you're here telling me like the DoD is being less transparent, but you're still trying to find a way, which I guess gives me hope, that we can still uncover the truth, or at least get the facts right.
Yeah. Well, you raise a few interesting points there that I kind of want to jump on or dive into. One of them is just the skepticism of the media. Like,
Hey everyone, Jen Amos here, just taking a quick break to let you know that this episode of Holding Down the Fort is brought to you by US Vet Wealth. US Vet Wealth is the company that I am very proud to be a part of, alongside with my husband, who is a West Point grad and Army vet, Scott R. Tucker. So here at US Vet Wealth, we provide bold financial education and flexible financial solutions for our career military families. You can get an idea of what I mean by that by downloading the first 3 chapters of my husband's book, Veteran Wealth Secrets, for free at our website, veteranwealthsecrets.com. In his book, he brings to the forefront of his discussion what the military and most veteran financial advisors usually gloss over as they focus on military retirement plans. The moment that you leave the military is the biggest opportunity of your life, and you're going to need money for it. Even though this book is titled Veteran Wealth Secrets, the book actually offers universal lessons and wisdom that military spouses can relate to, and who knows, maybe even nudge their service members to read. And it actually gives entrepreneurs a more flexible and profitable way to invest their revenue. A couple of testimonials that we have received for Scott's book. This is by Air Force Colonel Tom. So Tom, thank you for this testimonial. He says, Scott pulls the curtains back on things that we, active duty members, just accept as truth. And he questions the status quo with insightful and thought-provoking ideas. This book is the evolution of Rich Dad, Poor Dad that our generation and culture needs. You may have a different outlook on success and not agree with everything, but you should read this book. You'll regret it if you don't. Thank you, Tom, so much for that testimonial. Once again, if this description intrigues you, you can actually download the first 3 chapters for free by visiting veteranwealthsecrets.com. Thank you so much for listening, and let's get back to the show.
I think people, it's right. You should be skeptical of everything, but there's been a concerted effort of, throwing skepticism or criticism on just about every institution by the Trump administration. I mean, we're not talking to just the media and we're the quote unquote enemy of the people, but the FBI, the Department of Justice, the Department of Defense, like anyone that has kind of been seen or perceived as being, in the way gets marginalized. And it's, it has this building effect over time of people not being skeptical, but being cynical. And that is what I'm concerned about long term. Like, it's okay to be skeptical. I'm the most skeptical person in the world. As a journalist, there's a common trope in journalism that if your mother tells you she loves you, make sure you check it out first.
That's so funny. I love it.
We never take anything at face value, but it's, to be cynical of everything and think that there's some kind of nefarious thing going on with every possible facet of life. It's long term. It's just, it hurts us. And I'm speaking of America broadly. And I'm thinking about this, a common truth. How do we find that common ground? I mean, it's really hard to find common ground when you are told by your political leader, whatever side that is, that the other side is evil, that they want to destroy America. They're just, take your exaggeration. We've gotten away from this sort of, working together on issues to just, we need to destroy the other side. Otherwise we can't do anything outside.
Right.
I mean,
it's like, we can't get past that unless we destroy the other side.
Right. And it's that's, right now, and you saw it a little bit, early on of the Trump administration, there's the left and the resistance. I remember there was this big resistance flag, hanging from an construction site in Washington, D.C. And that was there was a news cycle on that. And that was, you're going to see that on the right same way. People are upset that they lost the election of their guy. But I mean, the rhetoric of, Biden is a radical, extreme socialist madman who's going to put us into camps and all sorts of stuff. Like
right.
that is obviously an exaggeration, but it makes it really, really impossible to work on anything, get anything done. You know, like I don't know. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I feel like it's just, I think the most that, you know, we can do is just to have better conversations with people around us in our sphere and not fall into that, you know, they're evil or horrible, because most people aren't. Some people support the Democrats, some people support the Republicans, some people are libertarian. And in all three of those groups, their avowed reason for existing is not to destroy the United States of America. It's to improve it. You know, everybody is on this thing that they want to make America better, and we all just have difference of opinion on how we do it. And it's just really disappointing to me and frustrating when I have, like, when we're having conversations, and this has happened to me in the past couple of weeks. I've had some friends that are veterans that I served with many years ago. I had guys in my first platoon he was claiming that, you know, a person in the Capitol was, you know, an Antifa guy. It's completely bogus and untrue. And I was asking him, like, how? Why do you think that? What leads you to that? And just me pushing back on it and asking questions, I was unfriended. Like,
hey, you know what I think it is? I think we're in like this ghosting culture, or like, you know, cancel culture, as some people call it, where it's like they just can't have a conversation. They just like block you. You know, it's just, no, I don't want to confront you. I'm going to block you. Like, that's just, you know, I even hear in the workplace, like when people get like hired, they like ghost the employer. You know, I just feel like it's just this weird time and generation where people aren't having direct conversations with each other and talking things out anymore. But it's quite fascinating. Obviously, we're not going to be able to solve it all today. But, you know, Paul, I really appreciate you taking the time to, you know, just entertain, you know, the topic and the conversation. Obviously, you know, Jenny Lynn and I always talk about how we just kind of wing these conversations, and very interesting how the conversation went this way. But I do want to make sure we end up on a positive note here in a minute, because I know you have to go in about 10 minutes. I thought I'd check in with Jenny Lynn first. Any thoughts so far?
Well, I think listening to both of you, what came up for me is with all of the cancel culture and the, you know, this side, that side, is what it's really brought about is a lot of anxiety. And, you know, everybody is just living in such a heightened state. And so here's my, you know, thump for mental health, which Task and Purpose also covers military mental health quite a bit for the post 9/11 guys and gals. You know, I think you're right. We have the opportunity to help the narrative with that and help ease the anxiety. And by easing the anxiety of the current culture, we can get back to some sort of normal status quo, like much less abrasive and invasive. And I think I have hope for that. I mean, again, mental health, like you will not find a bigger advocate than me. And, you know, for this very reason, I mean, living in a pandemic has made everything harder to do. You add in some unrest and it has stirred the pot of anxiety so high that I think people just don't know how to come down from that. And so it's that auto shut off, like, I will shut you off because I can handle no more input because my anxiety is already at max capacity. And so I appreciate, you know, the folks at Task and Purpose really trying to look into things that are true and real and really affecting like the everyday people. You and I had a conversation earlier today, and, you know, it talking about military spouses, and I think we have the opportunity as people who are engaged in the media to have conversations that help normalize talking about hard things and help lower the overall anxiety and help folks, you know, get back to a place where we can have hard conversations without having it become a shouting match or a shutting you out. So I'm hopeful for that and grateful for folks who do the hard work to help get us there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it'd be good. Oh, go ahead, Paul.
I just wanted to echo the mental health aspect that Jenny Lynn talked about. I mean, especially now, I mean, in the middle of pandemic and in a military context, you know, the increase in suicide last year, and I think it's going to, it's going to be, I don't want to make a prediction, but it's bad, right? Mm-hmm. And we kind of can see the issue. You can kind of tell that that's happening in the background. And I see it in my personal life. I can see my, fellow veterans and struggling and, dealing with those kinds of things. And, I'm keeping my phone, like if I get a late night call, then I'm like, okay, got to answer that one. Doesn't matter what's happening now. And, I just think like, one, mental health is really important, and it's not any kind of sign of weakness or anything to seek help. I'm happy to tell you that I go to therapy and do that, and it's good for me, and it really helps because I'm a very anxious person, and you kind of need the outlet. So if you don't have the outlet, then that's something you should look into, especially if you're in the military or veteran. There's so many resources available to you that you can get therapy for free. So there's really no excuse for it. And, I don't know. I'm really going back full circle here with like how 2021 is going. Mm-hmm. Right now, not so great, but I'm trying to just, do the basics, get up in the morning and try to work out, because that usually makes you feel better, gives you a release of, energy and everything and all that kind of stuff. Go to therapy. There's an app for meditation there's apps for meditation that I would highly recommend. And the last thing is just to check in with each other. I have this tendency to get really stressed out, and then I don't want to talk to anyone really. Like I just want to be like, this sad individual alone. And I have to constantly tell myself to like, no, call friends. They energize you, they build you up. Even if that's 5-10 minutes of conversation, it's really, really huge. And that's really how we're all going to get through this, nightmare of lockdowns and pandemic, is to keep connected with the people we care about and actually have those non-shouting conversations, just to chat about things. And eventually this will be behind us. I hope very soon. I have not been able to get my hands on the vaccine, but I keep trying.
Awesome. Well, Paul, I know that your time is valuable. So before we go, just real briefly, I think it'd be sort of nice to end on a positive note here. Let people know what the Duffel blog is about in case people want to look into that.
Duffel blog is a satire website. It's commonly referred to as the Onion for the military. And we've been around since 2012. And we are now a newsletter, actually. So if you go to duffelblog.com, it's DUFFEL, blog, BLOG.com, you can sign up for that and get our emails. And they come to your inbox every week, and there are usually stories written in a news style. So it looks like a news story, but it is decidedly not. But some of them have turned out to be true. So sometimes we're prophetic. But ultimately, Duffel blog is just we write about the military from a humorous lens and really point out the absurd when it comes up, which frankly, there's a whole lot of absurdity going on in PD. And
you've had some great fodder in the past year.
Yeah.
Really easy story making.
I can't believe it. We've been around. So March 2012, I think, is the time we launched. So, we'll be 9 years in later this year. And it's amazing because I thought, the first year or so, I thought I was going to run out of material. Like, how am I going to ever? We're going to hit on all these topics. We're going to make
surprise
all the jokes and then run out of stuff. And
boy, were you wrong?
I was completely wrong.
Still in business, y'all. Well, Paul, hey, thanks again for joining us. Jenny Lynn, thank you for bringing on Paul again. And I do have your contact information here. So if people do want to get a hold of you and learn about you, we'll have that in the show notes. So I know you have to get going. So again, thank you so much for joining us. Jenny Lynn, any final thoughts?
No, just thanks so much for coming on and joining us today. I appreciate learning the backstory on all the things you do. Thanks for chatting.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
All right. And to our listeners, we hope that today's episode gave you one more piece of knowledge, resource, or relevant story so you can continue to make confident and informed decisions for you and your family. We look forward to speaking with you in the next episode. Tune in next time.